Hello everyone. Um, Welcome to part 2 of this review video. As you all know, the semester is coming close to an end. I'm sure lots of you are excited. Um, it's really unfortunate that I never got to see you guys in person because I'm sure that experience would have been a lot more different. And I feel like, maybe we could have actually had a little bit more fun this term, but that's besides the point. Um, we just have to be patient because we can get through these tough times. Anywho, um, I want to show you guys a question that I built that I think is similar enough to convey a concept that is similar to one of your exam questions. So as you all know, your prof promised that he would put a poker game question on your final exam, and the poker game question that you guys practiced is a little bit different from the poker game question that's on the final exam. So I decided to sort of make up a question that would sort of convey the idea that is sort of used in that question. Um, I'm not going to go over how to do this question since it is like for extra credit, and I really think you guys should battle it like by yourselves and find out how to do this like on your own, like without my help. I mean, if you guys have questions, I can help, but like I would just suggest tackling this on your own time. Yeah, please go over the Pokemon trading cards game to study for your poker game question that you'll have on your exam. In this question, I also ask you to use the string find function. And for this specific case, string find is the best function to use for this question. However, maybe in your poker game question, you might find that the find function is a little bit more helpful. So if you look over the syntax for find, there's actually a cool syntax that you can use for find, and I'll explain what it does in a minute. Okay, alright, so I want to show you this cool syntax that find has, where you specify what element you want to find within an array, and then you put comma how many of those elements you want to find. I just want to find one of these elements, so I'm going to specify one. And then if you specify a direction, so if you specify last, what the find function will do is it'll find where 1 exists in this array. But since we specified the last, like this, since we specified last, MATLAB is going to find the last one within this array, and then you will get an index value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Your index, sorry, let's IDX. IDX is fine. Your IDX will be equal to 7. Just a quick pointer, quick tip, something that you should use on your poker game question. Okay, so that's the end of poker game review. Okay, all right. So the next question that I want to make sure you guys go over during your studying is the work evaluations part 1 and work evaluations part 2. And both of these questions are in your practice problem sets that we gave you guys this morning, or no, sorry, this evening, because we submitted at around 12. Yeah, so you'll find that both of these questions correlate heavily into one of your quiz questions that you'll have. Once again, don't want to spoil too much, but these questions are super similar to what you will have in your quiz, and I highly suggest that you look over these for practice. Yeah, not much to say here. You'll notice that this you'll notice that this review video is going to be kind of short. But yeah, that's for this question. That's for your next review part. And one more thing that I just wanted to add is that yes, this is definitely an exam question. However, depending on what group you're on, you may or may not get this question, but everyone will get like a cell array question in their exam. So so regardless if you get this question or not, it is still a really good idea to study this, study cell arrays, and yeah, just please do the questions. Okay, hello everyone. So for the next question, that is super related to your final exam, is the Cipher Encoder. Right here, it is 4 stars. But do not be scared by that rating. It is sort of a hard question. I mean, I think it's unfair for me to say that since I've been doing a lot of MATLAB and you guys have other stuff to do. But what I'm trying to say is, if you guys study this question well, it will have a huge payoff for those who get this question, or a question really similar to this, on their exam, because there's not much you can really change. I mean, there are changes, but without giving the answer away, we have only made a slight variation to this question. But if you understand this question, if you guys can get it right, if you guys save it in your desktop, it will help you lots when you do Quiz4. So please do Cipher Encoder with 4 stars on Module 11. Big payoff if you do it. Alright, so for your second last question, I made a original question, and I think you guys should try to do this by yourselves. So I laid out the question over here, so you guys can, you guys can pause the video right here and then just read by yourselves. But I'm going to read the question out loud. So using the string array provided sentence array, make a sentence by taking all of the strings and joining them into one big 1x1 string array. Use sentence as your final variable. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys the givens for this question. So sentence array is equal to 6 strings, each of them being a different word. And then essentially from lines 2 to 5, I'm inserting all of these strings into a cell. Because you guys will be having some questions regarding cell arrays, and I think it's important that you guys learn how to access contents within cell arrays and string arrays. So without further ado, you guys can copy the givens and start the question by yourselves, or you guys can keep the video going and listen to my explanation as to what the answer is. So the first line of code that I have from the answer is an empty string array. And the reason why we have an empty string array is we're going to do something similar to how we concatenate things in a for loop. So if you haven't noticed by now, this question is leaning towards a for loop because it'd be much easier to use it. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is that some of you are worried that the prof doesn't want you to answer your questions using a for loop. I mean, unless we specify otherwise, you guys are allowed to use for loops on your exam. Like, you guys won't get taken marks off of that. And if you guys feel that a for loop is the easiest way to do this, then by any means, please use it. But at the same time, try to think of the most efficient way to do this code. However, in my opinion, I think using a for loop to solve this question is the most efficient way of solving it. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this the for loop way. So the for loop that I have is for ii is equal to 1 to null cell array, because I want to individually access each contents within the each cell within the I want to individually access the content within the cell, and then I just want to access the string and then join it with the upcoming string. And actually the code for that is the upcoming one. So joined words is equal to cell array, and then in curly brackets II plus a space. So keep in mind that spaces do count as characters in MATLAB, so that's why I have no space on line 8, because I want it to be an empty string array. I don't want it to be a 1 by 1. So yeah, you can think of it this way. Every time your for loop loops, cell array is just accessing a different, the upcoming word, and then joining a space right next to it. And then to sort of store the old words and then have the for loop go into the next word and then join it is the upcoming line of code, which is sentence is equal to sentence plus joined words. So sentence starts off as an empty string array, and then this plus operator here is what is like joining two strings into one. So let's say we have like never and forgetty. If we do never plus forgetty, so never and forgetty was at first two separate string arrays, but since we use the plus operator, we're joining them into a 1 by 1 string, and it becomes never space forgetty space. So sentence is just used to store the old words and then add the new joined word, which is just cell array plus space. And then our last line of code is essentially just accessing the last index. So keep in mind that on our last loop, so if when II is equal to 6, so cell array at II is 6, so it's spaghetti. Spaghetti plus space will be the last thing that we join in our entire sentence. So what we want to do is we just want to access the last like character index, since strings are just like a giant box for like character arrays. Essentially what we're doing here is, first off, we're accessing the, I guess, the string array content. So first thing I want you to keep in mind is that sentence is a 1 by 1 string array. So this colon here doesn't really matter. We can have a 1 or a colon. They're both the same thing because it's a 1 by 1. So we're using curly brackets to sort of turn our 1 by 1 string array into a 1 by, like, really big. Hold on. It's just the length of this word right here. Or sorry, the length of this word right here. So that gets converted. So every time we put a curly bracket, the string that we're trying to analyze turns into a character vector. And then since it's a character vector now, I can just tell MATLAB that I want the last index, which is this thing right here, the end, it's just a space. We're asking you to delete that. And then you'll see in our next line, we have it removed. So that's the answer to this question. I guess I can use some like diagrams if you guys want me to. Let me see if I have a way to draw this. So in your givens you have, oh sorry, if you guys still don't understand how that happened, how all that code works, you guys can stick around. So essentially we have a giant, I gotta make sure that we're, so essentially we have a giant column vector, or sorry, row vector, or vector cell array, sorry, I should say that instead. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, okay. And all I've done is I've inserted these words, so never, and then forgetty, yeah, to eat your spaghetti. Oh, that's a long word. Okay, spaghetti. All right. So this is what the givens that I gave you does. So it just gives you a giant cell array with string arrays inside of it. And then all we're doing is we are accessing the contents. we're accessing the contents of this cell array by specifying curly brackets. Okay, and we have a for loop, so we can loop through each individual cell. So that's why we have numl cell array, so we can specify every single word. Okay, and so joined words will always be like it will always be joining two different like strings together. So celebrate II takes never. So let me do this. Joined words. Joined words. Celebrate II. Let's say we're on our first loop. It will just take never. Never, and then it takes spaghetti, or sorry, never, and then it takes a space. So essentially what we have is we just have never with a space. And then on our next line, all it does is it just it stores that into sentence. So if I delete this, if I delete that, sentence is now just never with a space. And then the next time we loop, MATLAB will take the next joined word, which is forgetty with a space. So sentence plus joined words looks like this. So never plus forgetty with a space. And then since we have this plus operator, all it does is it'll join those words, and then we get never space forgetty with a space. And then it'll keep doing that. So MATLAB will remember what the previous sort of sentence was. And then every time it loops, it's just going to take a new word with a space and then attach it to the old word. And that's essentially what this piece of code does. So if you guys, understand that now, that is a good thing, because one of your questions is super similar to this. And it does involve cell arrays, which is why I even bothered to put this thing in a cell array. So yeah, good luck to those who have this question on their exam. Okay. And for our last question, it's going to be another original question. It is another cell question. So if you guys haven't noticed by now, you guys definitely do need to study cell arrays, cell indexing, because that will be vital for your final. So yes, for those who want to just start off the question without my help, I guess you can pause the video and read the question if you guys want to get ahead of me. But I'm going to read the question out loud. So you're trying to find one of your friends in a movie theater. The theater holds 5 seats by 10 rows. So when you step inside the actual room with the movie, you're going to have 5 seats by 10 rows. The given cell array is 5 by 1, where each cell contains the seats of people who sit at the corresponding row. So essentially every cell is just like the row of 5 seats. The seats are represented as a string, and the locations of those seats are labeled as empty, or someone you know, or someone you don't know, or your friend's name. Your friend's name is randomly generated. Find the cell/row index of where your friend lies. Use friendlock to find the row at which your friend is at. Okay. So to give you guys a visual of what this array looks like, we essentially have a 1 by 10 cell array. And the reason why I draw these cells out like this is because I like to think of cells as just containers. You have to like pop the cap open just to get what's inside. But yeah, so the cell will sort of look like this. So everything inside these double brackets is either empty or someone you don't know, or your friend's name, which is what we're looking for. And to recap, all we're doing is we're finding the row at which this name lies. Okay. So let's get into the givens for this question. And I apologize in advance because I have to admit these are a lot of givens. You guys do have to copy a lot. There we go. So I want to make sure you guys don't see the answer by accident. Okay, so these are all the givens for this question. This is what it took for me to make that entire cell array that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, please copy these down, and yeah, pause the video here and start doing the question by yourself. For those who just want to sit and listen to me speak, that is cool too. I will get straight into the answer right now. So the first line that we're looking at is line 21. For I is equal to 1 to nominal theater spots. So if you guys didn't know by now, or if you guys didn't get a clue by now, sorry, I should say that, using a for loop for this would probably be ideal. You can also you can use the cell to mat function for this and convert that cell array into simply a matrix, like a string array matrix. But for this question specifically, I would use a for loop because the question on your exam, hint hint, nudge nudge, the contents within the cell array might not be the exact same. So let's say one cell has one more element than the other. MATLAB's gonna not like the fact that the contents are not symmetrical. Okay, let me draw this out really quickly. Okay, so let's say I have two cell arrays. I have 1, 2, and then I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, if I try to convert this like cell array into a matrix, MATLAB can't really do that because, you know, how can you make a matrix that looks like this? It doesn't exist. So for this, I think accessing the contents within the cell array using a for loop would be ideal. I honestly think it'd just be easier if you do it this way, because it's good practice for your final. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the next line of our answer. So the next line is row is equal to theater spots with curly brackets. Okay, so for those who still don't understand how curly brackets works, as I said before, cell arrays are like containers, and you need to sort of pop the cap open before you can access the contents within the array. I can show you what happens when you don't use curly brackets for this question. Let's go to MS Paint. So let's say I have a cell array, a 2x1 cell array with stuff inside. So we'll have let's have like 3 numbers here, 12, 14, 16, and we can have 14, 17, and 20. Okay, let's call this cell array cell. Yeah, original, I know. So if I want to grab the second row of this cell, like let's say I wanted to grab the contents within the second row of the cell, I can't use round brackets because what that does is it'll do this. So if I do cell 2, what that gives me is it gives me the entire cell itself. So I actually get a 1x1 cell. And then your output is just, it's going to look something like this. 14, 17, and 20. And you can't really do much with a cell array because like I said before, it's like a container. You can't really do stuff with containers except like move it around. So the reason why I have curly brackets is because curly brackets essentially opens up that container. And instead of getting a 1x1 cell, what I actually get instead is a 1x3 double vector. So we're essentially removing this cell, and this is our answer. And let me, instead of a 1x3, we get instead of a 1x1, we get a 1x3. Okay, and let's say I wanted to grab number 17 here. The way you do that is, so after, let me just delete this so you guys get the memo. So after you access the second row, sorry, let me just quickly do that. So after you access the second row, with these curly brackets, you can actually use round brackets afterward, because keep in mind, after we access the contents within the cell, that like the contents is not a cell array anymore. It's whatever like that typecast is. So let's say if I have a 1x3 double vector inside one of these cells, when I access the cell, I actually get a 1x3 double. So now we can use indexing for double typed vectors. You guys already know how to do that. So it would actually just be 2 in round brackets. So to access the contents of a cell array is 2, and then whatever contents you have inside that cell array, you can use whatever indexing you know for that. Okay, great. So now we got that out of the way. Let's get on to the next line of the answers. The next line is just the part where we check to see if that specific row has the name of like the friend we're looking for. So if any, when row equals name, friend lock equals II. Okay, so for those who are confused of what that does, let me show you what it does. So keep in mind, row is a row, like a string row vector, since we went inside the cell. So what we have is, after we access the contents within that cell array, we get a string vector, and then so if any, so the vector, which is the cell array with the curly brackets, equals name, so friend lock is equal to II. Okay, so what that means is MATLAB will compare the strings, and then instead of getting a string vector, we get a 1x5 logical vector. So we either get zeros or ones. So we get 0, 0, 0, 1. Let's say we find the name that we're looking for, 0. Since there's a 1 in this entire row, any will just take that as a true value. So essentially we just have a true, so we're initiating our condition that we set. And then after we set that condition, we're assigning friend lock to the for loop index, which is II. And the reason why we have that is because we set our for loop to loop the exact same amount of times at which we, So the reason why we have that is because we set our for loop the exact same amount of times that we have a cell row. So whichever row we're accessing the contents of, when we find that row has that name, we just assign the row location with the loop index. Because so if we're on loop 2, we're analyzing row 2 of the cell. So it's just the loop corresponds to the row. That's simple. That's how I can put it. And yeah, that's literally the answer for this question. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. I don't know how I can get any more efficient than that. So if you guys did that without my help, I think you guys are good to go. Yeah, and that's the end of this question. Okay, hello everyone. If you made it to the end of the video, if you got to this part, that means you guys have looked through all the questions, or you guys are just curious what's at the end of the video. So I thought for the last part I would just record me, because I feel like you guys haven't seen me enough. I've been keeping my webcam off. for the most part, just because, you know, I've been quarantined. I've been looking my best. um, but yeah, I just feel like seeing other humans is like probably a good idea right now, especially since we're reaching the end of the term and we haven't really saw each other, that often. Um, but I really wish you guys the best of luck on your exams. Um, I know that the online term is a lot harder for most people because the learning environment is just different and it's not for everyone, and I completely get that. Uh, the last part of my 2A was like that, and I remember um, having to get used to like a different schedule and learning how to keep myself motivated. I'm gonna have to go through the same thing when I go into my 2B term, and same with Noreen. But yeah, no, we understand your struggle, and we wish you the best of luck on your exams. I really hope you guys study all the questions. Um, you know, I'm really sorry for all the horrible like audio that I've been like putting out in my review videos. My laptop isn't really that good, which is why I'm using the co-op money I'm getting now to get a new laptop. So this doesn't happen next time. But I'm sure it's been like enough for you guys to like, at least understand. Um, but yeah, the best of luck, everyone. I really wish I got to see you in person, but I'm sure that'll happen later in the future when things aren't as bad. But see you guys. Good luck.